Welcome. Tonight, let us step into the endlessly fascinating world of weather and climate, but in the most calm and soothing way possible. Weather touches our lives every single day. The warmth of the morning sun, the cool wind brushing past on an evening walk, the gentle rhythm of rain on rooftops. Yet, beyond these familiar sensations, an interconnected dance of winds, oceans, clouds, and sunlight that has been shaping life on Earth for millions of years. As you settle in for this video, you'll discover 50 carefully chosen facts about weather and climate. From the mysteries of the jet stream to the vast force of monsoons, to the delicate equilibrium of El Niño, each fact is designed to both educate and relax. My pace tonight will be gentle, almost like a bedtime story, so you can learn, but also unwind. If you enjoy this type of calming, educational content, I kindly invite you to subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely find this relaxing and meaningful. You can also leave a quiet note in the comments, sharing your country, your city, and the time at which you are watching. It's always beautiful to see how weather unites people across the globe, even though our climates differ so much. Let's begin with a soothing introduction to the atmosphere itself, thin life-supporting shell that blankets our planet. The atmosphere is surprisingly delicate. If you compress the air that surrounds Earth into a solid layer at sea level density, it would be only about 10 kilometers thick. That's thinner, relative to the Earth's size, than the skin of an apple compared to the fruit beneath. Yet, in this narrow veil of gases, weather is born. Tiny variations in temperature, pressure, and humidity create everything from the softest breeze to the fiercest hurricanes. One calming fact is that the very air you are breathing tonight has been recycled countless times through the lungs of forests, oceans, and even ancient creatures. A molecule of oxygen that you inhale may once have floated over the Amazon rainforest, dissolved in the waves of the Pacific Ocean, or swirled in the jet stream above Japan. The air is a traveler, a global messenger, constantly in motion. Weather itself is the short-term expression of this motion. It is the combination of daily temperature, humidity, wind, and precipitation. Climate, on the other hand, is the long-term average decades and centuries of these patterns woven together. A useful analogy is to think of weather as a single note in a song, and climate as the melody over time. Consider this fact: nearly 75% of the sun's energy that reaches Earth is absorbed by the oceans. The seas act as a vast heat reservoir, storing warmth and releasing it slowly. That's why coastal cities often experience milder winters and cooler summers compared to inland regions. Without oceans, Earth's climate would be more extreme, with scorching days and freezing nights, not unlike deserts or even the moon. Speaking of oceans, let's drift into the idea of the jet stream, fast, narrow current of wind high in the atmosphere. It may sound distant, but the jet stream influences your daily life. It steers storms, separates cold air from warm air, and even determines flight times for airplanes crossing continents. For example, a flight from New York to London can sometimes be an hour shorter thanks to a favorable jet stream, while the return journey fights against those same high-altitude winds. Now, let's move gently toward rainfall, one of the most life-giving features of weather. It's astonishing to realize that all the rain in the world begins as tiny dust particles in the atmosphere. Water vapor condenses around microscopic specks of dust, pollen, or sea salt, forming droplets that eventually fall as rain. Each raindrop has a small mineral or organic particle at its heart, meaning in every shower, the sky is quietly delivering pieces of the land and sea back down to earth. Rainfall patterns are also central to human civilizations. Consider the Indian monsoon, a powerful seasonal wind system that carries moisture from the ocean onto the subcontinent. This cycle sustains agriculture for nearly 1 billion people. Farmers rely on its timely arrival, and even slight delays or variations can influence food prices, economies, and migration. And yet, the monsoon has its gentle side to it, can bring cool breezes and lush greenery after months of heat. The flip side of rain is drought. Dry spells remind us of the balance between weather and survival. The Sahel region of Africa, stretching just below the Sahara Desert, is one of the most climate-sensitive zones in the world. A small change in rainfall patterns there can affect millions of people, highlighting how weather is both deeply local and profoundly global. Let's now turn toward storms. While they may seem frightening, there is a kind of beauty in their formation. Hurricanes, for example, require precise conditions: warm ocean water, moist air, and low wind shear. These elements must align perfectly, almost like the notes in a symphony, to create a storm of spiraling clouds. The largest hurricanes can release more energy in a single day than all the world's power plants combined. Yet, their structure, the calm eye, surrounded by towering clouds, shows nature's balance between chaos and calm. One particularly calming fact: despite their power, most storms never reach populated areas. The majority of the Earth's storms swirl far out at sea, hidden from human eyes, their rain falling into the open ocean. This constant cycle of evaporation, condensation, and rainfall is part of Earth's natural rhythm, a background music of the planet. Now, let's touch on El Niño, a climate phenomenon that might sound mysterious. El Niño occurs when warm water in the Pacific Ocean shifts eastward, disrupting normal weather patterns. It can bring heavy rains to South America, droughts to Southeast Asia, and even influence hurricanes in the Atlantic. Its partner, La Niña, is the opposite, cooler Pacific waters with a different set of global effects. These events remind us that Earth is deeply interconnected. A patch of warm water in the Pacific can ripple outward, shaping weather thousands of kilometers away. As you listen tonight, I want you to notice how these systems are never isolated. Winds connect continents. Oceans connect hemispheres. Clouds link sky and land. Even a gentle breeze outside your window tonight may be part of a larger circulation that has traveled across half the globe. Before we close this opening section, let's reflect on one more fact. Earth is not the only planet with weather. Mars has dust storms that can engulf the entire planet. Jupiter has the Great Red Spot, a storm larger than Earth that has been raging for centuries. Compared to these extremes, Earth's weather is gentle, life-sustaining, and deeply familiar. It is our constant companion. So as you sink deeper into relaxation, remember this: every gust of wind, every drop of rain. Every flash of lightning is part of a story, billions of years in the making. The story of how Earth's atmosphere, oceans, and land create the conditions that sustain us. As we continue our calm journey through weather and climate, let's lift our gaze upward and wander among the clouds. These soft, drifting shapes are far more than decoration in the sky. They are messengers of the atmosphere, carrying information about temperature, humidity, and movement of air. Clouds are classified into several families depending on their height and form. High clouds, like cirrus, sit above 6 kilometers and often appear as delicate wisps, almost like brushstrokes on a canvas. They are made of ice crystals, and their feathery appearance often signals fair weather, though they can also be the forerunners of a coming storm. Mid-level clouds, such as altostratus or altocumulus, create sheets or rolling textures, while low clouds like cumulus or stratus bring the familiar shapes that resemble cotton or blankets across the horizon. One calming fact is that clouds are constantly recycling. A single cloud may form, drift, and dissolve within an hour. Yet the water within it continues its endless journey through the hydrological cycle. The drop that falls as rain in one place may rise again as vapor, travel across continents, and return as snow years later. Each cloud is temporary, yet water itself is eternal. Did you know that the average cumulus cloud weighs as much as 100 elephants? That may sound incredible, considering how effortlessly they float. But because the water droplets are spread over such a vast volume of air, the cloud remains buoyant. It's a reminder that even the heaviest things can seem light when distributed widely. Lightning is another atmospheric wonder. It is nature's dramatic way of balancing electrical charges between clouds or between the sky and the ground. A single bolt can be 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun, though it lasts for only a fraction of a second. Interestingly, lightning also produces a natural fertilizer. It splits nitrogen molecules in the air, allowing them to combine with oxygen and form compounds that rain carries to the soil. This means every storm is, in its own way, feeding life on Earth. Thunder. The companion of lightning is simply the sound of air expanding rapidly from that immense heat. It is an echo of energy rolling across landscapes. Many people find thunder calming when heard from a safe distance. It is like the voice of the sky, reminding us of its vast power and presence. Sunsets and sunrises offer yet another gentle weather fact. Their brilliant colors are created by scattering. As sunlight travels through the atmosphere, shorter blue wavelengths scatter in all directions, while longer red and orange wavelengths pass through. When the sun is low on the horizon, its light travels a greater distance through the atmosphere, leaving behind the warm hues we associate with twilight. Every sunrise and sunset is, quite literally, a play of light filtered through the air we breathe. Now, let's wander to one of the most beautiful weather phenomena: rainbows. They occur when sunlight passes through raindrops, bending and reflecting back into our eyes. Each droplet acts as a tiny prism, and together they create a circle of color. Most of the time, we only see an arc because the ground blocks the lower half of the circle. But from airplanes Passengers sometimes glimpse full-circle rainbows beneath them, surrounding the aircraft's shadow. A softer cousin of the rainbow is the halo, a ring of light around the sun or moon. Halos form when light interacts with ice crystals high in the atmosphere. They can appear as glowing circles or arcs, and for centuries, they have been regarded as signs of changing weather. Ancient sailors used halos as natural forecasts, believing that a ring around the moon meant rain was on its way. Speaking of the moon, did you know that weather feels different depending on moonlight? While the moon doesn't directly affect the weather, its brightness changes how we perceive the night air. In ancient cultures, full moons were thought to bring frost or clear skies, because cold nights often coincided with cloudless, moonlit evenings. Clouds also affect our temperature in subtle ways. During the day, they reflect sunlight, keeping surfaces cooler. At night, they act like blankets, trapping heat and leading to warmer evenings. That is why clear nights are often colder, as the Earth's warmth escapes freely into space. Snow, too, tells us about the atmosphere. Each snowflake is a crystal of frozen water, and no two are exactly alike. Their shapes depend on the humidity and temperature of the air as they form. The delicate, branching patterns are records of the environment in which they were born. Holding a snowflake is like holding a frozen diary of the sky. One calming fact: snow is a natural insulator. Beneath a thick blanket of snow, the ground and plant roots remain warmer than the air above. Arctic animals, such as foxes and bears, take advantage of this by digging into snowbanks, creating shelters that protect them from the coldest winds. If you've ever listened closely during snowfall, you might notice how quiet the world becomes. Snow absorbs sound, softening the environment. It creates a cocoon of calm, a natural hush that encourages stillness. In many cultures, snow is associated with peace, not only because of its visual purity, but also because of the silence it brings. Finally, let us linger on fog or cloud at ground level. Fog transforms landscapes into dreamlike spaces, blurring edges and muting colors. For centuries, it has inspired poetry and art, symbolizing both mystery and tranquility. In reality, fog forms when the air cools enough for water vapor to condense near the surface. It is simply a reminder that the boundary between sky and earth is thinner than we often think. So, as we drift further into our journey tonight, remember, the sky above us is not empty. It is alive with patterns, colors, and forms. Every cloud, every rainbow, every flake of snow is a gentle expression of the atmosphere's rhythm that has been playing since long before humans appeared, and will continue long after us. Let us now shift from the gentle dance of clouds and snow to another rhythm of our atmosphere, the movement of air itself. Winds are the breath of the earth, invisible yet powerful, carrying heat, moisture, and energy across continents and oceans. Without winds, our planet would be a very different place, stagnant, uneven, and inhospitable. At its most basic, wind is simply air moving from areas of high pressure to low pressure. But when viewed across the globe, wind becomes part of a grand circulation system. Picture the Earth as a vast spinning sphere warmed unevenly by the sun. Warm air near the equator rises, while cooler air near the poles sinks. This creates convection, cells large loops of moving air that form the backbone of our global climate. Near the equator, these circulation patterns give rise to the trade winds. They have been known to sailors for centuries, blowing steadily from east to west. Early explorers and merchants depended on them to cross the Atlantic and Pacific, carrying not only people but also goods, cultures, and ideas. These winds, steady and reliable, quite literally shaped the age of exploration and global trade. Just north and south of the trade winds lies another important band, the westerlies. These winds blow from west to east, guiding weather systems across Europe, North America, and much of Asia. When you watch clouds racing across the sky on a windy day in a temperate region, you are watching the westerlies in action. High above all this, at the boundary between warm and cold air masses, lies one of the most fascinating features of our atmosphere, the jet streams. These narrow bands of strong winds circle the globe at high altitudes, sometimes reaching speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour. Jet streams are invisible rivers of air, and yet they influence everything from aviation routes to the formation of storms. Airlines use them to save time and fuel, while westbound flights often avoid them to reduce turbulence. The power of winds doesn't stop at the sky. Over the ocean, winds drive currents, vast streams of water that circulate across the globe. The Gulf Stream, for example, carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico across the Atlantic, moderating the climate of Western Europe. Without it, cities like London or Paris would experience winters far colder, more like Siberia than the relatively mild climate they enjoy. In the Pacific, trade winds and ocean currents combine to create phenomena like El Niño and La Niño. El Niño occurs when trade winds weaken, allowing warm water to spread across the central and eastern Pacific. This small shift in the ocean atmosphere system can cause enormous ripple effects. Floods in South America, droughts in Australia, and altered monsoon seasons in India. La Niña, its counterpart, strengthens the trade winds, leading to the opposite extremes. Together, these cycles remind us that climate is a tightly woven web. What happens in one part of the world can resonate thousands of kilometers away. Wind also shapes landscapes. In deserts, strong winds sculpt dunes, pushing sand into towering ridges that march across the horizon. Some of the world's tallest dunes, like those in Namibia or the Sahara, are monuments to the patient work of wind over centuries. In coastal regions, sea breezes cool cities and nourish ecosystems, while in mountain valleys, local winds like the Mistral in France or the FN in the Alpscan transform the weather in a matter of hours. One calming yet curious fact is that forests themselves create winds. Trees release water vapor through a process called transpiration, and this rising moisture can help draw in air from surrounding regions. In the Amazon rainforest, this biotic pump plays a major role in sustaining rainfall, not just locally, but across South America. In other words, the forest breathes and the atmosphere responds. Dust carried by winds is also vital to life. The Sahara, though dry and seemingly barren, sends vast plumes of nutrient-rich dust across the Atlantic each year. This dust fertilizes the Amazon rainforest, providing essential minerals like phosphorus to its soils. Without this atmospheric gift, the Amazon would not be nearly as lush or productive. Winds, therefore, connect ecosystems across oceans, binding deserts to forests in a hidden cycle of life. Of course, winds can be destructive too. Hurricanes and typhoons are driven by warm ocean waters and spiraling winds. Their immense power can reshape coastlines, disrupt economies, and displace entire populations. Yet, even these storms play a role in Earth's system. They mix ocean layers, redistribute heat, and carry rainfall to regions that might otherwise remain dry. One of the most mesmerizing natural wonders linked to wind is the aurora borealis and aurora australis, the northern and southern lights. Though not caused directly by weather, these shimmering displays are connected to the solar wind. Streams of charged particles from the sun interacting with Earth's magnetic field. When these particles collide with gases in the atmosphere, they create glowing curtains of green, pink, and purple light that dance across polar skies. It is a reminder that winds are not only earthly, but also cosmic. Even at the smallest scale, winds touch our daily lives. The breeze that cools your face on a summer evening. The gentle gust that carries the scent of flowers. The soft rustling of leafsall are micro-expressions of the planet's larger circulation. We live immersed in this invisible river, carried along whether we notice it or not. So, as you breathe slowly tonight, imagine yourself connected to these currents. The same air that fills your lungs may have traveled across deserts, oceans, and forests. It may have swirled high in a jet stream or drifted quietly through valleys. Winds remind us that our atmosphere is shared, that the boundaries we draw on maps are fleeting compared to the endless movement of air. From the restless winds above, let us now follow the journey of water. For it is water that turns air into weather, and weather into life. Without the soft fall of rain or the steady flow of rivers, civilizations would never have blossomed, and forests, grasslands, and cities alike would not exist as we know them. Rain begins with something almost magical, though entirely scientific. Warm air rises and cools, and as it does, water vapor condenses into tiny droplets that cluster together to form clouds. These droplets grow until gravity pulls them back down to the earth as rain. Every raindrop you've ever felt began its life as invisible vapor lifted high into the sky before its gentle return. Different places on Earth experience vastly different amounts of rainfall. The Amazon rainforest, often called the lungs of the planet, receives over 2,000 millimeters of rain each year, feeding its endless rivers and lush biodiversity. In contrast, the Atacama Desert in Chile is one of the driest places on Earth, with some regions not seeing rain for decades. Yet, even there, rare showers can awaken fields of wildflowers, transforming the barren desert into a temporary sea of color. Monsoons, the seasonal winds and rains of South Asia, are among the most dramatic examples of water's rhythm. Each summer, moist air from the Indian Ocean sweeps over the land. releasing torrential rains that nourish crops, refuel rivers, and sustain over 1 billion people. For India, Bangladesh, and much of Southeast Asia, monsoons are both a blessing and a challenge vital for agriculture, yet capable of devastating floods. The monsoon cycle is so dependable that it has shaped calendars, rituals, and economies for thousands of years. Rivers, too, are lifelines carved by water. They are nature's great highways, carrying not only water, but also silt, nutrients, and stories. Consider the Nile in Egypt, stretching more than 6,600 kilometers across Africa. Each year, it floods its banks, leaving fertile soil that allowed one of the world's greatest civilizations to flourish. Without the Nile's predictable cycle, the pyramids and temples we admire today may never have risen. The Amazon River is another wonder. With more water than the next 7 largest rivers combined, it discharges so much into the Atlantic Ocean that fresh water flows hundreds of kilometers out to sea. Its basin is home to countless species, many still undiscovered. And its network of tributaries is so vast that entire nations could fit within it. In Asia, the Ganges River is not only a source of water, but also of spiritual meaning. Millions of people consider it sacred, and it sustains one of the most densely populated regions on Earth. Similarly, the Mekong, the Yangtze, and the Indus have all given rise to ancient and modern societies, their waters feeding rice paddies, fisheries, and trade. Rain and rivers also sculpt landscapes. Over millions of years, water has carved canyons, such as the Grand Canyon in the United States, a vast chasm that tells the geological history of Earth, layer by layer. Water creates waterfalls, where the Zambezi River plunges in a thundering curtain of mist and rainbows. These wonders remind us that the power of water is both delicate and immense. And yet, water is not always evenly shared. Some regions face chronic drought, where rains fail and rivers shrink. Others confront floods when too much water arrives all at once. Modern cities and nations spend billions on dams, canals, and reservoirs to manage this ancient cycle. Dams, such as the Hoover in the United States, or the Three Gorges in China, are not just feats of engineering. They are attempts to tame water's power, storing it for agriculture, drinking, and energy. But even with all our technology, water remains beyond our full control. Climate change is making rains more unpredictable. Storms are stronger, droughts longer, and river systems more fragile. The balance that sustains civilizations for centuries now shifts before our eyes. And so, understanding the geography of rain and rivers is more than academic. It is essential for our shared future. One of the most calming aspects of water is its sound. The patter of rain on a rooftop, the gurgle of a brook, the deep roar of ocean waves carry a universal comfort. They connect us to something timeless. Every river eventually joins the sea. Every raindrop becomes part of the cycle again. Water is the great recycler, always moving, always renewing, always shaping the story of our planet. So, as you listen and drift deeper into calm, think of the journey of a single raindrop. Perhaps it fell from a cloud over the Himalayas, rolled down into the Ganges, and eventually reached the Bay of Bengal. Or perhaps it landed on your window tonight, part of a cycle billions of years old. The waters that flow through rivers, oceans, and even our own bodies are the same waters that have circled the earth since its beginning. From the flow of rivers on land, let us drift now to the unseen rivers of the sky and sea. These are the winds and ocean currents, vast, invisible highways that move heat, moisture, and even life around the globe. They are the great movers of geography, shaping climates, guiding explorers, and sustaining economies. Wind may seem like nothing more than moving air, yet it is one of the most powerful sculptors of our planet. It arises from a simple principle. Warm air rises and cool air sinks. As the sun heats different parts of Earth unevenly, air begins to circulate. Or the steady trade winds that once carried sailing ships across oceans. The trade winds are among the most famous of these invisible highways. They blow steadily from east to west in the tropics, so reliable that sailors in the age of exploration relied on them to cross the Atlantic and Pacific. Columbus, Magellan, and countless others charted their voyages along these winds, opening connections between continents. Even today, the trade winds influence global shipping routes, air travel, and weather systems. In higher latitudes, different winds dominate. The westerlies, which blow from west to east, carry storms across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia. These winds shape the climates of London, New York, and Tokyo, bringing rain and shifting temperatures. Further still, near the poles, the polar easterlies swirl cold air downward, reminding us of the vast contrasts in Earth's climate zones. Winds not only move whether they shape landscapes. In deserts, they sculpt dunes, creating ever-changing seas of sand, like the Sahara or the empty quarter of Arabia. In coastal areas, winds build barrier islands and spread fertile, loess soils that nourish agriculture, as seen across northern China. Without wind, entire ecosystems, from grasslands to savannas, would be very different. But wind is not alone. Beneath the waves, ocean currents move with equal importance. They are driven by wind, the rotation of the earth, and differences in water temperature and salinity. These currents form a global conveyor belt, carrying warm water from the equator to the poles and returning cold water back again. One of the most famous of these currents is the Gulf Stream. Flowing from the Caribbean across the Atlantic, it carries warm water northward, keeping Western Europe far warmer than it otherwise would be. Without the Gulf Stream, London might have the icy winters of Labrador, and Paris could resemble Siberia. This current is not just a curiosity, is a lifeline for millions. In the Pacific, the Humboldt Current flows along the coast of South America, bringing nutrient-rich cold water from the depths. This fuels some of the most productive fisheries in the world, sustaining Peru's anchovy industry and feeding countless seabirds. Without this current, both nature and economy would suffer. Ocean currents also interact with winds to create dramatic weather events. The El Niño phenomenon, for example, occurs when warm water spreads across the equatorial Pacific, altering wind patterns and triggering floods in some regions, droughts in others. Its counterpart, La Niña, brings the opposite effect, reinforcing winds and strengthening storms. Together, these cycles ripple through global agriculture, trade, and even cultural traditions tied to seasonal weather. Currents and winds also guided human exploration. Polynesian navigators, using only stars, swells, and wind direction, crossed vast stretches of the Pacific, settling islands thousands of kilometers apart. Their knowledge of currents was so precise that they could detect land beyond the horizon simply by reading subtle changes in the waves. Likewise, European explorers relied on prevailing winds and currents to chart trade routes between continents. Even today, our world economy depends on these invisible highways. Cargo ships follow current patterns to save fuel. Airlines plot routes using jet streams, those fast-flowing winds high in the atmosphere, to reduce flight times. The Tokyo to Los Angeles flight, for example, can be hours shorter when riding the eastbound jet stream. Without understanding these patterns, modern travel and commerce would grind to a halt. But there is also fragility. Climate change is already affecting wind and current systems. The polar jet stream, once stable, is becoming more erratic, leading to unusual weather patterns across North America and Europe. The great conveyor belt of ocean currents, known as thermoline circulation, is slowing as polar ice melts, threatening to disrupt global climate balances. These shifts remind us how connected we are to forces we cannot see, yet deeply depend upon. Winds and currents also carry life itself. Seeds are spread by breezes, allowing plants to colonize new lands. Migrating birds ride favorable winds across continents. Ocean currents transport plankton, fish larvae, and even whales across vast distances, linking ecosystems across oceans. In this way, the unseen highways of air and water are not only mechanical forces, they are living threads of Earth's great web. So the next time you feel a breeze against your skin, or watch waves roll in from a distant horizon, you are sensing the same forces that shaped continents, guided explorers, and connect the entire world. Winds and currents are silent companions, always moving, always shaping, always whispering stories of how the earth breathes. From the steady rhythms of winds and currents, let us now step into the world of storms and rains. Weather is never still. It pulses with energy, rising, falling, and reshaping landscapes as it goes. For most of us, rain is simply a part of daily life, yet it is also one of the most vital and poetic expressions of the planet's atmosphere. A storm begins with contrasts. Warm air and cool air collide. Moisture condenses, and the skies grow restless. Thunderstorms form when warm, humid air rises quickly, meeting cooler layers above. Clouds tower higher and higher, sometimes reaching the height of Mount Everest, until lightning flashes within them. That sudden discharge of energy is not just a burst of light, it's the atmosphere balancing itself, an electrical correction on a planetary scale. Thunder, that rolling voice of the sky, is the sound of air rapidly expanding from lightning's heat. A single bolt of lightning is hotter than the surface of the sun, though only for a fraction of a second. And yet, this fiery moment nourishes life. Lightning helps fix nitrogen into forms that plants can use, fertilizing forests and fields. Storms take many shapes across the globe. In the tropics, Cyclones, hurricanes, and typhoons spin with terrifying power. Though named differently in different regions, they are all the same phenomenon: immense rotating storms fueled by warm ocean waters. They bring devastation, but also renewal. When they pass, they replenish aquifers, stir ocean nutrients, and reshape coastlines, constantly reminding us of the cycle of destruction and creation. In South Asia, the monsoon is not a single storm, but a season of rain. It is one of the most dramatic and influential climate patterns on Earth. Each year, as summer heats the land, warm air rises over India and surrounding regions, drawing in moist air from the ocean. For months, rain pours down, feeding rice paddies, rivers, and forests. Entire economies and cultures are built around this seasonal rhythm. The monsoon brings both celebration and anxiety. Too little rain means drought and famine. Too much means floods and displacement. There is also beauty in gentler rains. Think of the soft drizzle of a spring morning, where droplets beat on leaves and soak into the soil. These rains are quiet lifelines, sustaining crops and forests without fanfare. In Japan, the plum rains of early summer, called Suyu, nourish fields and gardens. In Europe, steady autumn rains signal the turning of seasons, preparing the land for winter. Each culture interprets rain not just as weather, but as poetry, rhythm, and memory. Snow, too, is a form of rain. Each flake begins as a tiny crystal, shaped by temperature and humidity, unique in its geometry. Snow blankets landscapes in silence, reflecting sunlight back into space. Cooling the earth, in mountainous regions, snowpacks serve as frozen reservoirs, slowly melting into rivers that sustain billions of people. Without snowmelt, cities from California to Central Asia would struggle to survive. Rain and storms also sculpt the earth itself. Over millions of years, raindrops carve valleys, shape limestone caves, and feed glaciers that grind mountains into plains. The Grand Canyon, vast and silent, is in part the work of water falling from the sky, running persistently toward the sea. Every raindrop is part of a story that began long before us and will continue long after. In deserts, storms are rare but unforgettable. A single thunderstorm can turn a dry wash into a rushing river within minutes. Flowers bloom after rains, transforming barren land into fields of color, only to fade again into silence. For desert cultures, rain is sacred, often celebrated with festivals and rituals. It is a reminder that life can persist even in the harshest places, waiting patiently for renewal. On a global scale, rainfall shapes entire civilizations. The Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, nourished by rains and river floods, was the birthplace of agriculture. The predictable Nile floods, timed with seasonal rains in East Africa, allowed ancient Egypt to thrive for thousands of years. Even modern megacities depend on carefully managed rainfall. Stored in reservoirs and redirected by canals, their very survival tied to the whims of the sky. Storms, too, connect to economies and technology. Satellites track cloud formations across oceans, warning of hurricanes before they land. Aviation industries adjust flight paths to avoid turbulence. tourism relies on sunny seasons, yet often fears the same rains that sustain local landscapes. The global economy, in many ways, still dances to the rhythm of storms and showers. But storms are not only destructive or utilitarian, they can be deeply calming. The sound of rainfall, steady and soft, is one of the most universal sounds of relaxation. It muffles the world, creating a cocoon of peace. Many people fall asleep more easily to the patter of raindrops, a rhythm that feels ancient and comforting. Perhaps this is because, deep within us, rain has always meant life, water, and safety. So, the next time you hear thunder roll across the sky, or see raindrops gather on your window, remember, you are part of a story as old as the earth itself. Storms and rains have shaped civilizations, nourished forests, carved mountains, and soothed weary hearts. They are the breath of the planet, rising, falling, and always returning, carrying both power and peace. From the warmth of rains and the power of storms, let us now journey north and south to the frozen frontiers of our planet. Here, in the polar realms and high mountain ranges, weather takes on another form. Snow, ice, and an enduring cold that shapes both land and life. The Arctic and Antarctic may seem barren at first glance, yet they are dynamic, breathing systems. These frozen worlds regulate Earth's climate like giant mirrors. Snow and ice reflect most of the sunlight that reaches them, bouncing it back into space. This reflection, known as albedo, helps cool the planet. When ice melts, darker ocean waters absorb more heat, setting off a chain of warming that echoes far beyond the poles. Snowflakes themselves are wonders of natural geometry. Each begins as a tiny ice crystal, forming around a particle of dust in the atmosphere. As the crystal tumbles through clouds, it branches out into complex patterns, no two alike. Some are needle-like, others star-shaped, each a frozen record of the conditions it passed through on its descent. A snowflake falling on your sleeve has traveled through layers of history written in temperature and humidity. Ice is not just a surface, covering it is a living archive. Glaciers, vast rivers of ice, flow slowly downhill, carving valleys and reshaping mountains. In places like the Himalayas, the Andes, and the Alps, glaciers feed rivers that supply water to billions. When you drink from the Ganges, the Mekong, or the Rhine, you may be sipping snowmelt that fell as flakes decades or centuries earlier. In Antarctica, the ice sheet is nearly 5 kilometers thick in some places. Within it lies a frozen record of Earth's past. Scientists drill deep cores to reveal layers of snow compressed over hundreds of thousands of years. Trapped air bubbles inside contain samples of ancient atmospheres, telling us how carbon dioxide and temperatures have shifted across ice ages. In this way, ice is both a protector of life today and a storyteller of life long gone. The Arctic, meanwhile, is not land, but sea ice, an ocean frozen on its surface. Unlike Antarctica, which is a continent, the Arctic is a floating ice cap. In summer, the ice shrinks, exposing blue waters where polar bears hunt and whales migrate. In winter, the ice expands, creating a white desert stretching for millions of square kilometers. Indigenous peoples, such as the Inuit and Chukchi, have adapted to these cycles for centuries, building cultures of resilience and knowledge in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Snow and ice influence weather patterns far beyond their borders. When Arctic ice melts, it can change ocean currents, disrupting the flow of warm and cold waters that regulate climates around the world. A colder winter in Europe, a delayed monsoon in Asia, or unusual heat waves in North America can sometimes be traced back to changes in polar ice. These frozen realms may seem distant, yet they are intimately connected to our daily weather. At higher altitudes, mountaintops create their own frozen climates. The Andes cradle glaciers that sustain cities like Lima and La Paz. The Himalayas, sometimes called the Third Pole, hold more ice than anywhere outside the Arctic and Antarctic. This frozen reserve feeds rivers that support nearly half of humanity. If these glaciers shrink too quickly, millions could face water shortages, reshaping economies and migrations. Ice storms to leave their mark. When rain falls into a layer of freezing air near the ground, it coats trees, wires, and streets in glass like sheaths. Beautiful and dangerous, ice storms transform landscapes overnight into shimmering crystal forests. They remind us of the thin balance between warmth and cold, and how even a small change in temperature can remake the world around us. Snow also plays a cultural role. Winter festivals, from Japan's snow lantern displays to Europe's alpine ski celebrations, transform cold into community. For centuries, people have celebrated snow's arrival as both a challenge and a gift. In literature and poetry, snow often symbolizes purity, silence, and new beginnings. In cities, the hush after a snowfall softens the sound of traffic, creating a rare quiet in modern life. Economically, the frozen realms are sources of both opportunity and risk. Arctic shipping routes are opening as sea ice retreats, promising shorter paths between Europe and Asia. Yet, with this comes danger. Fragile ecosystems, resource exploitation, and rising geopolitical tension over who controls the newly accessible seas. Tourism, too, reaches into polar regions as travelers seek the northern lights or the icy beauty of Antarctica. The balance between exploration and preservation is delicate and still unfolding. And yet, in their silence, snow and ice offer a gift of calm. The muffled quiet of a snowy night, the sparkle of frost on branches, the vastness of a white horizontal invite reflection. They remind us that weather is not only forceful, but also still, serene, and contemplative. The frozen worlds may seem inhospitable, yet they are guardians of balance, regulating heat, sustaining rivers, preserving history, and inspiring wonder. Without them, life across the planet would be unrecognizable. Snow and ice are not just the absence of warmth. They are the presence of something vital, something that binds us all to the most distant edges of the earth. From the still silence of snow and ice, let us drift upward into motion, into the invisible currents that circle our world. Winds are not just air in motion. They are the heartbeat of the atmosphere, carrying warmth, moisture, and stories across continents and oceans. At their simplest, Winds arise from differences in pressure. Warm air rises, cool air sinks, and the movement between the two creates flow. What begins as a gentle breeze on a coastline or through a forest is part of a much larger dance patterns of circulation that connect the entire globe. One of the most familiar winds to humanity is the sea breeze. On a summer afternoon, the land warms more quickly than the ocean. Hot air over the land rises, and cooler air from the sea rushes in to replace it. The result is a refreshing wind, one that ancient sailors depended upon and coastal dwellers still welcome. At night, the process reverses, and the land breeze blows outward, carrying warmth away. Trade winds are another ancient ally of travelers. Blowing steadily from east to west in tropical regions, they once guided ships across the Atlantic and Pacific. Columbus sailed with the trade winds when he crossed from Spain to the Caribbean. Today, even though ships are powered by engines, trade winds remain vital for weather systems, steering tropical storms and influencing rainfall across equatorial regions. In higher latitudes, a different wind dominates, the westerlies. These strong currents blow from west to east, carrying storm systems across oceans to land. The westerlies are the reason North America often sees weather moving in from the Pacific, and why Europe receives Atlantic-borne storms. Without them, climates across these continents would be very different, reshaping agriculture, culture, and economies. Above them all, high in the atmosphere, races the jet stream. This narrow band of powerful winds flowing at speeds over 300 kilometers per hour encircles the globe like an aerial river. Airlines plan their routes to take advantage of its push, saving time and fuel when traveling eastward. Yet, when the jet stream slows or bends, it can trap weather in place. Heat waves linger, storms stall, and unusual patterns emerge. Scientists watch the jet stream closely, for it is both a guide and a warning. Some winds carry names steeped in history and culture. The Mistral of southern France, a cold wind from the Alps, has shaped agriculture and architecture in Provence. Homes are built with narrow windows facing away from its direction, and vineyards thrive in the dry air it brings. In North Africa, the Sirocco blows hot and dusty from the Sahara, sometimes reaching Europe with a haze of sand. In California, the Santa Ana winds sweep from inland deserts to the coast, drying the air and fanning wildfires. Each wind tells the story of its land and people, binding weather with daily life. Monsoon winds are perhaps the most transformative. Driven by the contrast between land and sea, they shift direction with the seasons. In summer, moist winds from the Indian Ocean sweep into South Asia, bringing rains that nourish rice fields and forests. In winter, the winds reverse, blowing dry air outward. The rhythm of these winds dictates agriculture, culture, and survival for over 1 billion people. Without the monsoon, civilizations from India to Southeast Asia would not have grown as they did. Wind shapes not only life, but also the land itself. In deserts, steady winds sculpt dunes that march slowly across landscapes, forming patterns visible from space. In colder regions, wind-blown snow creates drifts, sculpting the terrain in ephemeral waves. Over centuries, winds erode mountains, carry volcanic ash, and deposit fertile soil across plains. The very ground beneath us is, in part, a gift of moving air. Winds also whisper in the language of sound. The soft rustling of leaves, the whistling around buildings, the roar of a storm through mountain passes. Each tone carries a mood. In many cultures, winds are woven into myths and music. In ancient Greece, they were gods. Boreas, the north wind. Notice, the south, Eurus, the east, and Zephyrus, the gentle west. In Native American traditions, winds are spirits that guide and teach. Even today, we feel winds not only as physics, but as presence. In modern times, winds have become a source of renewable energy. Wind turbines, rising like white sentinels along coasts and plains, capture the invisible motion and turn it electricity. This harnessing of the atmosphere connects ancient reliance on breezes with modern technology. Just as sails once powered journeys across oceans, blades now power homes and cities. Yet winds also bring challenges. Hurricanes and typhoons are winds at their most violent, spiraling storms born from warm oceans. Their power can devastate coastlines, uproot communities, and alter economies. Still, even in destruction, they remind us of the raw energy circulating in our atmosphere. From a child's kite tugging against its string to the roaring flight of jet aircraft, winds are companions we live with daily. They are constant yet unseen, delicate yet immense. They are the reason weather travels, the reason deserts form, and the reason ships once set their sails. So when you hear the sigh of wind outside your window tonight, remember that it is part of a grander story, one that stretches from mountain passes to jet streams high above. Winds are the unseen threads that stitch our world together, weaving climates, cultures, and connections across the globe. From the restless winds that shape continents, let us lift our eyes higher to the skies where clouds form, drift, and dissolve. Clouds are more than shapes floating overhead. They are the diaries of the atmosphere, written in vapor and light. They tell us when storms approach, when warmth rises, and when calmness has settled across the land. At their heart, clouds are born from condensation. When moist air rises and cools, water vapor condenses into tiny droplets or ice crystals suspended by air currents. Billions of these droplets gather together, forming the visible bodies we see stretching across the heavens. Each type of cloud is a clue, a signature of the processes unfolding invisibly above us. The most familiar are cumulus clouds, those cotton-like puffs often scattered on sunny days. They mark areas where warm air is rising, and while most bring fair weather, they can grow into towering forms when conditions are right. If they climb high enough, they become cumulonimbus clouds, the thunder clouds that carry lightning, thunder, and sometimes hail. Stratus clouds are their opposite. Instead of puffs, they form a uniform gray blanket across the sky. These low, heavy layers often bring drizzle or steady rain, muting the landscape with their veil. Above them, cirrus clouds drift like brushstrokes of white, thin, and wispy, made of ice crystals at great altitudes. Their delicate appearance often signals that a change in weather is coming, as they form ahead of approaching fronts. Clouds are not only markers of weather, but also regulators of climate. They reflect sunlight back into space, cooling the earth, while also trapping heat below, keeping nights warmer. The balance of these effects influences global temperatures. Scientists study cloud formation with satellites and simulations, for in their fleeting forms lie clues to our planet's future climate. There is poetry in clouds as well. Cultures across the world have long seen them as symbols, messengers, and metaphors. In Japan, cloudscapes are celebrated in art and literature, often paired with mountains and cherry blossoms. In Norse mythology, clouds were thought to be the breath of giants. Even today, we find ourselves gazing upward, tracing shapes: an animal, a face, a ship sailing in the sky, projecting imagination into drifting vapor. Certain cloud phenomena inspire awe for their rarity. Lenticular clouds, smooth and lens-shaped, hover over mountain ranges, often mistaken for UFOs due to their symmetrical appearance. Mammatus clouds, hanging like pouches beneath a storm, resemble the surface of a sea turned upside down. Noctilucent clouds, visible only at twilight near the poles, glow with an electric blue, the highest clouds in the atmosphere. These wonders remind us that the sky holds mysteries as profound as the oceans below. Fog, too, is a kind of cloud one that has descended to the ground. It transforms landscapes into dreamlike realms, muffling sound and softening sight. Cities like San Francisco are famous for fog, where cold ocean currents and warm inland air meet. For sailors, fog has been both a danger and a guide, a signal of shifting seas and hidden coasts. Rainbows form when sunlight refracts through droplets, breaking into a spectrum of colors. Double rainbows, rarer still, cast a second arc with reversed hues. Halos encircle the sun or moon when ice crystals in high clouds bend light, creating luminous rings. These optical phenomena link water, light, and air in displays that feel both scientific and magical. Skies, of course, are more than clouds. Their colors shift with the angle of the sun and the scattering of light. The blue of midday comes from molecules scattering shorter wavelengths, while sunsets blaze orange and red as light travels longer paths through the atmosphere. In deserts, sunsets can linger with golden fire, while in polar regions, the midnight sun stretches twilight into dreamlike hours. Sometimes the skies ignite with auroras. These shimmering curtains of green, purple, and red are caused by solar particles colliding with Earth's atmosphere near the poles. For those who have stood beneath them, auroras feel like living spirits dancing in silence, a connection between the cosmos and the earth below. Clouds and skies also influence human mood and culture. Seasonal rhythms of sunshine and overcast skies shape festivals, architecture, and even diets. In Mediterranean regions, homes are designed to embrace long summers of light. In northern latitudes, celebrations of midsummer or winter solstice are tied directly to the sky's cycles. The sky is not just atmosphere. It is culture, memory, and meaning. Air travel, too, relies on understanding clouds. Pilots avoid cumulonimbus towers, navigate through cirrus layers, and sometimes rise above entire weather systems to find calm skies. For passengers, the view above the clouds is often breathtaking, endless white ocean below. With the sun blazing overhead. When you next look up and see clouds drift past, know that you are seeing the living breath of the planet. They are not static objects, but constant movement born, shaped, and dissolved by invisible forces. They are reminders of change, transience, and beauty, writing the story of weather across the sky. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the sky as a canvas stretching across the globe. Each cloud, each hue, and each shimmer of light is a stroke in the painting of Earth's atmosphere. And just like the winds, clouds connect us, all farmers, reading them for rain. Sailors, steering by their signs. Children, lying in fields, imagining stories in their shapes. The sky is our shared ceiling, and clouds are its ever-changing art. From the drifting clouds, we now follow the seasonal rhythms. They help create the mighty monsoons. The word itself comes from the Arabic mausim, meaning season. And indeed, monsoons are nothing less than the heartbeat of seasonal change for nearly half the world's population. Monsoons are not simply storms, as many imagine. They are vast, shifting wind patterns that change direction with the seasons, bringing heavy rains in one half of the year and dry conditions in the other. These cycles are most dramatic in South Asia, where summer monsoons feed rivers, fields, and cities across India, Bangladesh, and beyond. Without them, agriculture would falter, economies would weaken, and daily life would be profoundly different. The mechanism is simple but powerful. In summer, the land heats faster than the ocean. Warm air rises over the subcontinent, drawing in moist winds from the Indian Ocean. These winds climb over the Western Ghats, the Himalayas, and other ranges, releasing torrents of rain as they rise. The result is months of life-giving rainfall, sometimes overwhelming in its abundance. Cities like Mumbai or Calcutta brace themselves for streets turning into rivers, yet farmers eagerly await the same rains to nourish rice, paddies, and tea plantations. Entire economies hinge on the timing of these monsoons. When they are late or weak, food prices rise, rivers shrink, and drought spreads. When they arrive with fury, flooding displaces millions and damages infrastructure. The delicate balance of water and timing makes monsoons both a blessing and a burden. The Indian monsoon is the most famous, but it is far from the only one. East Asia has its own monsoonal rhythms, bringing heavy summer rains to China, Korea, and Japan. Southeast Asia experiences monsoons that fill the Mekong River and flood fertile plains. Even parts of Africa, particularly the Sahel, depend on monsoon-like rains to transform dry savanna into green pasture each year. Monsoons shape culture as deeply as they shape rivers. In India, festivals like Tej and Onam mark their arrival. Songs, poems, and films celebrate the rains, portraying them as symbols of renewal, romance, and relief from summer's heat. In literature, the monsoon is often a metaphor for longing or dramatic change, much like springtime is in European traditions. Yet monsoons also remind us of vulnerability. Climate change appears to be altering their patterns. Some years bring stronger downpours, leading to catastrophic floods, while others bring droughts where rain should have been plentiful. The predictability that generations of farmers once relied upon is becoming more uncertain. Researchers use satellites, ocean buoys, and supercomputers to better understand these patterns. For the future of food security and economic stability depends on it. Monsoons also reveal the deep connection between oceans and atmosphere. Events like El Niño and La Niña in the Pacific Ocean can disrupt the Asian monsoon, delaying rains or reducing their strength. This ripple effect shows us how interconnected global systems truly are. Fluctuation thousands of miles away in the Pacific can decide whether crops thrive in South Asia. In urban settings, monsoons take on a different character. Cities like Bangkok, Manila, and Dhaka endure traffic halts, flooded streets, and overflowing drains. Yet for children, the monsoon can still feel like magic. A time of splashing in puddles and watching lightning streak across the sky. For city planners, however, it is a test of infrastructure. Drainage systems, reservoirs, and dams are all designed with monsoon rains in mind. At sea, the monsoon winds are equally significant. For centuries, sailors in the Indian Ocean relied on them for trade. The predictable shift of winds allowed ships to sail from East Africa to India in summer and back again in winter. This seasonal rhythm built the spice trade, connected cultures, and shaped history. From the Swahili coast to the Arabian Peninsula and into Southeast Asia, ports thrived because the monsoon winds guided commerce. Even today, tourism in parts of Asia is dictated by monsoon calendars. Travelers avoid rainy months in favor of dry seasons, shaping local economies. Luxury resorts in Goa, Bali, and Phuket prepare for their busiest times when the skies are clearer. Yet some adventurous visitors are drawn by the dramatic rains themselves, finding beauty in the monsoon's intensity. Science has given us forecasts, but the monsoon retains an element of mystery. Predictions can falter, leaving farmers and governments uncertain. There is humility in this, a reminder that despite satellites and supercomputers, the atmosphere remains a living system too complex to fully master. If you close your eyes and imagine the monsoon, you might picture heavy clouds rolling across a horizon. The sudden scent of wet earth rising from dry soil, and the sound of rain drumming on rooftops. There is an intimacy to it, as though the land itself is sighing with relief. That moment when parched soil drinks deeply against one of the planet's most vital exchanges, sustaining life across vast regions. As you drift into rest tonight, picture the monsoon as a global breath, inhaled from the oceans, exhaled across the land. Each cycle carries with it the promise of growth, renewal, and challenge. It is nature's rhythm, steady yet unpredictable, ancient yet still unfolding, a story written in rain. From the mighty monsoons of Asia, let us now step upward, tracing the invisible rivers of air that circle our planet. Winds are the Earth's restless breath, ceaselessly moving energy, moisture, and heat from one place to another. They may seem chaotic when felt as breezes or gusts, yet from a global view, they form patterns of astonishing order. One of the most crucial of these patterns is the jet stream. Imagine a narrow band of air, flowing at incredible speeds, often faster than 200 kilometers per hour, snaking across the upper atmosphere. Jet streams are like invisible highways in the sky, steering storms, guiding weather systems, and shaping climates across continents. The strongest jet streams form where cold polar air meets warmer subtropical air. These contrasts set up fast-moving rivers of air around the globe. Pilots rely on them. A flight from New York to London may be an hour shorter when riding the jet stream eastward, while the return trip often takes longer because planes must fight against it. The economic effect of these winds is subtle but real, saving fuel, time, and money, and influencing the global aviation industry. The jet streams are also storytellers of climate change. In recent decades, scientists have noticed that as the Arctic warms faster than the rest of the world, the temperature difference that powers the polar jet stream weakens. This can cause the jet stream to meander, dipping far south or looping far north, sometimes stalling weather patterns. When this happens, a heat wave lingers, or storms remain fixed over one region, intensifying floods or droughts. Yet jet streams are only one part of the atmospheric dance. Lower down, we find trade winds, steady east-west breezes that once carried explorers and merchants across the seas. These winds, blowing reliably between 30 degrees north and south of the equator, helped launch the great age of exploration. Portuguese and Spanish sailors depended on them to reach the Americas, while merchants from Asia used them to reach Africa and back. Even their name, trade winds, reminds us of their role in global commerce and cultural exchange. Today, they still drive ocean currents like the equatorial currents, shaping climates and supporting marine ecosystems. Coral reefs, fisheries, and coastal livelihoods depend on the circulation patterns that these winds help sustain. Above the equator, near the doldrums, we encounter another character, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or ITCZ. Here, trade winds from north and south meet, forcing air to rise and form towering clouds. This is why the tropics are so lush and rainy. The ITCZ is not a fixed line, but a wandering belt of storms, shifting north and south with the seasons, bringing vital rainfall to equatorial regions. In contrast, the subtropics around 30 degrees latitude are dominated by descending air, creating the world's great deserts, the Sahara, the Arabian Desert, and the deserts of Australia. The winds here are dry, hot, and persistent, showing us how atmospheric circulation explains the very placement of biomes on Earth. At higher latitudes, we find the westerlies winds that blow from the west toward the east. These winds fuel powerful mid-latitude storms, moving weather across North America, Europe, and Asia. They also create challenges for sailing ships in earlier centuries, which often struggled to cross oceans against these prevailing flows. Together, these pattern-strayed winds, westerlies, jet streams, form a global engine. They distribute heat from equator to poles, balance climates, and shape the journeys of clouds, storms, and even civilizations. When winds fail, as they sometimes do, the world notices. For instance, shifts in trade winds across the Pacific can trigger El Niño or La Niña, changing rainfall, disrupting fisheries, and altering weather worldwide. Culturally, winds hold a special place in human imagination. The Greeks personified them as gods: Boreas, the north wind; Zephyrus, the gentle west wind. In Japanese culture, the word kamikaze, meaning divine wind, referred to storms that protected Japan from Mongol invasions in the 13th century. Across the Pacific Islands, traditional navigators read the winds with exquisite skill, guiding canoes across vast seas without maps or compasses. Even today, wind carries symbolic weight. It represents freedom, change, or unseen forces at work. In literature and poetry, winds are messengers of fate, whispers of nature's power. In reality, they are both invisible and indispensable, carrying pollen, dispersing seeds, and driving the rhythms of ecosystems. Winds are also being reimagined in the modern economy. Renewable energy harnesses them through towering turbines, turning the restless sky into electricity. Offshore wind farms now power millions of homes, and the industry is rapidly growing, offering cleaner alternatives to fossil fuels. The economics of wind are reshaping energy systems and influencing policies worldwide. If you imagine the world from space, winds become clear as swirling patterns of white clouds flowing in majestic bands and spirals. They reveal not chaos, but harmony, a choreography that has persisted for millions of years. Each gust you feel is part of this global symphony, carrying echoes of deserts, seas, and mountains. You rest. Picture the winds not as disturbances, but as lullabies. Soft breezes through a forest, the steady rush along a coastline, or the hush of air before rain arrives. Each is a reminder of the planet's ceaseless breathing. Winds circle the world endlessly, linking every place to every other, carrying with them the quiet promise of connection. After wandering with the winds, let us now turn our gaze upward to the ever-changing canvas of the sky. Clouds are among the most familiar yet mysterious features of our atmosphere. They can be fluffy and playful, towering and dramatic, or thin and ghostly. But beyond their beauty, they are fundamental to the Earth's climate, ecology, and even human imagination. At their simplest, clouds are just tiny droplets of water or ice suspended in the air. Yet the way they form, move, and vanish is part of a grand cycle that connects oceans, forests, rivers, and even our breath. Clouds are water in motion, pausing in the sky before returning to the earth as rain or snow. There are countless types of clouds, but meteorologists group them into families. Cumulus clouds are the cottony heaps we see on warm afternoons. They form when sunlight warms the ground, causing air to rise and cool, allowing water vapor to condense. Their bright shapes can look like castles, animals, or even ships, sparking imagination in children and poets alike. Then there are stratus clouds, gray blankets that cover the sky. They bring stillness, often without rain, like a soft veil stretched overhead. In contrast, cirrus clouds, high and wispy, look like brushstrokes painted across a blue canvas. Made of ice crystals, they can be the harbingers of changing weather, sometimes signaling storms to come. The most dramatic are the cumulonimbus cloud giants that soar up to 15 kilometers into the sky. These are storm builders capable of producing thunder, lightning, hail, and even tornadoes. Inside them, powerful updrafts swirl water and ice, creating immense towers of energy. Yet, even these tempests are part of a delicate balance, redistributing heat and moisture across the globe. Rainfall, born from clouds, is life's great distributor. Each drop that falls nourishes plants, fills rivers, and recharges aquifers. In tropical rainforests, daily downpours sustain biodiversity so rich that thousands of species may live within a single square kilometer. In other regions, seasonal rains define entire cultures. The monsoon rains of South Asia, for example, dictate agriculture, economy, and even festivals. A delayed or weakened monsoon can affect millions of lives, showing how intertwined human fate is with the sky's rhythms. Snow, too, is a form of rain, but one that transforms landscapes into quiet wonderlands. Snowflakes form when water vapor freezes directly into crystals, growing into intricate, six-sided designs. No two are ever exactly the symmetry of ice. Snow blankets mountains, storing water for spring rivers and shaping ecosystems from the Rockies to the Himalayas. Even fog is just a cloud that has descended to Earth. For travelers and sailors, fog has long been both a hazard and a mystery. Entire cities, like San Francisco, are defined by their fog, which rolls in daily from the sea. For writers and artists, fog is a metaphor for uncertainty, a veil that hides the familiar. Culturally, clouds have inspired awe across civilizations. In Chinese poetry, clouds symbolize wandering thoughts, freedom, and the passage of time. In Japanese Shinto tradition, they are seen as the breath of the mountains. In Western art, clouds often serve as heavenly backdrops, connecting Earth to the divine. Clouds are also central to modern science. Satellites now track them daily, helping us understand weather and climate. High albedo clouds, like bright stratocumulus, reflect sunlight and help cool the planet. Others trap heat at night, warming the surface. Their role in climate change is complex, and predicting how they will respond to global warming remains one of meteorology's greatest challenges. There's also a poetic paradox in clouds. They seem permanent, yet they are fleeting. A cumulus cloud may form, grow, and dissolve within minutes. To watch clouds is to practice mindfulness, observing change without attachment. It is no wonder that so many traditions see them as metaphors for thought itself drifting, forming, and vanishing. Rain has its own cultural weight. It is celebrated in songs, prayers, and rituals. Ancient peoples often danced or offered sacrifices to bring rain during drought. Today, rain is still woven into art and memory, sometimes joyous, sometimes melancholic. In literature, it often symbolizes renewal or sorrow, depending on how it falls. There are also extraordinary weather events tied to rain and clouds. For instance, in the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, may not fall for decades. Yet when it does, dormant seeds burst into life, carpeting the desert with flowers in a phenomenon called Desierto Florido, or blooming desert. Such rare rainstorms remind us of water's power to transform. Thunder and lightning, born within clouds, are among nature's most spectacular shows. Lightning is a giant spark, discharging electrical energy as clouds rub particles together. A single bolt may heat the air to 30,000 degrees Celsius 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Yet it lasts only a fraction of a second, followed by thunder, the rolling voice of the sky. As you drift deeper into relaxation, think of clouds as companions of stillness. Imagine lying on a meadow, watching them drift lazily overhead. Each one is a traveler, part of the eternal water cycle, moving from sea to sky, sky to land, and land back to sea. Clouds remind us that everything in nature is both transient and connected. The next time you see rain on your window or a fog rolling in, remember, these are not just weather events, but part of Earth's endless story. They are the poetry of the sky, written in vapor and light, calming us with their quiet rhythms. From the gentle drifting of clouds, let us move into the realm of nature's more dramatic moods. Weather can be calm and soothing, but it can also unleash forces that reshape landscapes, economies, and even history. Extreme weather events are reminders of the immense energy moving through Earth's atmosphere, balancing heat, redistributing water, and influencing human lives on scales both intimate and global. Among the most powerful are hurricanes, also called cyclones or typhoons, depending on the region. These vast storms form over warm oceans when sea surface temperatures rise above about 26 degrees Celsius. Heat and moisture rise from the water, spinning into organized systems under the Coriolis effect. What begins as a cluster of thunderstorms can grow into a monstrous storm, with winds exceeding 250 kilometers per hour in the strongest categories. At the center of a hurricane lies the place of eerie calm. Surrounded by the violent eye wall, the eye may feel peaceful with clear skies and light winds. But it is deceptive, for just beyond lies the storm's most destructive fury. When hurricanes make landfall, they bring not only high winds, but also storm surges, walls of water that can flood coastlines. Entire cities, like New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, have been reshaped by such events. Typhoons in the Western Pacific can be even stronger than Atlantic hurricanes, sometimes earning the title of super typhoons in regions like the Philippines, Japan, and China. These storms are part of the seasonal rhythm, both feared and prepared for. Communities often build infrastructure and cultural resilience around the knowledge that storms will return. Then there are tornadoes, smaller in scale, but often more violent. A tornado is a rapidly rotating column of air that touches both the cloud base and the ground. They form under supercell thunderstorms, where wind shear causes rotation within the storm. In the United States, Great Plains, nicknamed Tornado Alley, spring and early summer bring conditions that can spawn hundreds of tornadoes each year. Though tornadoes may last only minutes, their power is immense. Some can sweep entire houses from their foundations, hurl vehicles, or strip the bark from trees. Yet, there is also a strange beauty in their spiraling forms, captured in photography and folklore. Native American traditions often spoke of tornadoes as spirits or messengers, symbols of sudden change and transformation. Blizzards are another form of extreme weather, combining snow with powerful winds. Unlike a simple snowstorm, a blizzard reduces visibility to near zero, making travel dangerous and sometimes life-threatening. On the Great Plains of North America, winter blizzards once determined the survival of early settlers and livestock. In modern times, they still cause economic disruptions, grounding flights, and halting transportation. Yet, for those safe indoors, a blizzard can also bring a strange, comforting, enforced pause. With snow muffling the outside world, in contrast, heat waves bring danger of a quieter kind. Extended periods of unusually high temperatures can be deadly, especially in cities where concrete and asphalt trap heat. The 2003 European heatwave caused tens of thousands of deaths, highlighting how vulnerable human populations are to rising extremes. Unlike storms, heat waves arrive without thunder or lightning, yet their toll on health, agriculture, and energy demand can be immense. Equally impactful are droughts, the absence of rain rather than its excess. Droughts may unfold slowly, unnoticed at first, but over time they dry rivers, reduce crop yields, and strain societies. Ancient civilizations, like the Maya, experienced periods of decline linked in part to prolonged drought. Even today, regions like East Africa and the American West grapple with water scarcity, reminding us that weather shapes the fate of civilizations. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring extreme weather phenomenon is the monsoon. Unlike hurricanes or tornadoes, monsoons are not sudden storms, but seasonal systems, driven by the differential heating of land and sea. Monsoons bring months of rain that sustain agriculture in South Asia, West Africa, and parts of Australia. For farmers, the timing of the monsoon is everything. If rains arrive late or weak, entire harvests may fail. Culturally, monsoons are celebrated in songs, films, and festivals, symbols of fertility and renewal. Beyond their destructive power, extreme weather events are also engines of renewal. Hurricanes stir ocean waters, bringing nutrients to the surface. Floods, though devastating, leave behind fertile silt that enriches farmland. Lightning from storms sparks wildfires, which can clear forests and trigger regrowth. Nature's extremes are part of cycles that sustain ecosystems, even when they disrupt human lives. Modern technology has given us better tools to track and predict these events. Satellites orbit the Earth, watching for storm formation. Doppler radar scans for tornado signatures. Climate models project the frequency and intensity of extremes in a warming world. These tools save lives, but they also remind us of our dependence on understanding the atmosphere. Culturally, storms have always fascinated humanity. In Norse mythology, Thor was the god of thunder, wielding a hammer that struck the sky. In Hindu tradition, Indra was the deity of storms and rain. Even today, films and literature use storms as symbols of conflict, transformation, or rebirth. The roar of thunder and the crash of waves stir something ancient in our imagination. As you rest, picture these extremes not as threats, but as reminders of Earth's vast energy. Storms, hurricanes, and tornadoes are spectacles of balance moments when the atmosphere releases its stored power. Like the cycles of calm and fury within our own lives. They are part of a larger rhythm. To observe them, even from a safe distance, is to glimpse nature's raw artistry. As we move deeper into our journey, let us reflect on how weather has guided the story of humanity. For while storms, rains, winds, and temperatures are forces of nature, they are also the invisible architects of history, shaping where we live, how we travel, what we grow, and even how societies rise and fall. Consider the origins of the earliest agricultural civilizations. The Nile River Valley in Egypt thrived not only because of fertile soil, but because of predictable seasonal flooding driven by rainfall patterns upstream in Ethiopia. The weather system that governed the Nile's rise was central to Egyptian culture. Priests measured flood levels, and the prosperity of kingdoms was tied to whether the weather blessed them with abundant waters or cursed them with drought. In this way, weather was not just a backdrop, was the heartbeat of empire. Similarly, in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, weather's unpredictability shaped a culture of irrigation, engineering, and careful record-keeping. Without the seasonal cycles of rain, the very concept of cities might have emerged differently. Where rainfall was abundant, agriculture required less planning. Where it was scarce, societies learned to collaborate, building canals and reservoirs. Weather became a teacher of cooperation and organization. In South Asia, the monsoon winds did more than water rice paddies. They built trade empires. Sailors learned to harness the alternating summer and winter monsoon winds, carrying spices, textiles, and ideas across the Indian Ocean. Ports like Calicut, Malacca, and Zanzibar rose as global crossroads because merchants could trust the rhythm of the monsoon. Without these weather-driven winds, global trade might have taken centuries longer to develop. In Europe, the Little Ice Age, which spanned roughly the 14th to 19th centuries, cooled the continent and reshaped economies. Shorter growing seasons forced agricultural innovation. Wine regions shifted southward, and northern settlements in Greenland abandoned their farms. Harsh winters even influenced politics and warfare. Rivers like the Thames froze, allowing festivals on the ice, while military campaigns were altered by sudden cold snaps. Weather was not passive, it was a silent player in history's decisions. The story of exploration and empire is also a story of weather. Sailors relied on trade winds and westerlies to cross oceans. Columbus reached the Americas by riding easterly trade winds and returned via the westerlies of the North Atlantic. The global age of exploration unfolded not simply through ambition, but through the steady patterns of Earth's winds and currents. Even the Silk Road's maritime routes depended on predictable seasonal breezes. Weather has also shaped cities. London's infamous fog, intensified by coal smoke, earned it the nickname the Big Smoke, and influenced everything from architecture to literature. Cities in the Middle East used wind towers, ingenious architectural features that caught breezes and funneled them indoors, cooling homes long before electricity. Venice rose as a city of canals, but its prosperity depended on favorable winds and tides to maintain maritime dominance. In more recent history, weather has shifted the outcomes of wars. Napoleon's invasion of Russia faltered under brutal winter cold in 1812. Similarly, During World War II, the German army stalled outside Moscow as temperatures plunged. On D-Day in 1944, Allied forces relied on a narrow window of weather forecasts to launch their invasion. A shift in wind, a clearing of skies, these moments altered the course of nations. Weather even influences culture and art. The Impressionist painters of France were fascinated by changing skies and light, creating canvases that mirrored fleeting weather moments. Japanese haiku poetry often captures weather in its brevity: falling leaf, a drifting snow, a summer rain shower. Musicians have written symphonies inspired by storms and gentle breezes alike. In this way, weather becomes not only a physical reality, but also a muse. Economically, weather remains one of the most powerful forces. Agriculture depends on rainfall and temperature. Tourism thrives on sunny beaches or snowy mountains. Energy systems shift as heat waves drive electricity demand for cooling, while storms damage infrastructure. Even luxury industries, like wine production, hinge on subtle changes in weather. Whether grapes ripen under warm days and cool nights, or face drought and heat stress. Technologically, we have tried to tame weather. From cloud seeding experiments to vast irrigation systems, humanity has sought to control rainfall, temperature, and wind. Yet, despite advances, we remain deeply dependent on weather's whims. Air travel routes still shift with jet streams. Shipping companies adjust for storms. Farmers, no matter how modern their equipment, still watch the skies. At a deeper level, weather governs human psychology. A bright sunny day can lift moods, while prolonged gray skies bring seasonal affective disorder. Cultures living under monsoon rains often associate them with romance, fertility, and renewal. Meanwhile, desert societies develop rituals around rain as a sacred event. Weather is not just external, it weaves into the inner rhythms of human life. As you listen, consider this: every civilization you know, every empire you've read about, and every city you visited has been shaped, in part, by the weather above it. It is the quiet partner in human destiny, the unseen sculptor of history's timeline. From the grandeur of ancient pyramids nourished by river floods to the skyscrapers of today, designed winds, weather has been with us, guiding us, testing us, and inspiring us. And so, as we prepare to move into our final section, remember that weather is not just the passing of clouds or the fall of rainette. It is a story, one that humanity continues to write together with the skies. As we arrive at the final chapter of our journey, let us pause and breathe. We have wandered through storms and sunshine, from the delicate beauty of rainbows to the immense force of hurricanes. We have traced the invisible paths of jet streams high above us. And we have followed the patient rhythm of monsoons that water crops and carry ships across oceans. And now, as the night deepens, it is time to gather these threads into a calm reflection. Weather is something we often take for granted. We wake, we glance at the sky, we decide whether to carry an umbrella or a coat. Yet, beneath these daily choices lies an extraordinary truth. Weather is the most immediate expression of Earth's living system. It is the atmosphere speaking to us in clouds, winds, and temperatures. Unlike geology, which unfolds over millions of years, or the slow march of continental drift, weather is the Earth's instant voice. Climate, by contrast, is the memory of weather. It is the collection of patterns, stored across decades and centuries, whispering stories of balance and change. A single storm may pass, but a climate defines the character of a region. A desert remains arid through generations, while a rainforest hums with rain. Together, weather and climate weave the conditions that make life possible. Think again of the forests that depend on rain. The savannas shaped by alternating wet and dry seasons, the tundra ruled by frozen winds. Without these weather patterns, the diversity of Earth's ecosystems would collapse. Polar bears, penguins, orchids, and elephant sol live within envelopes of climate defined by countless moments of weather. In this sense, weather is not random chaos, but the pulse of planetary life. For humans, weather has always been both friend and foe. It provides water for fields and winds for sails, yet it also brings droughts, floods, and storms. Across history, people have learned to read the skies. Shepherds once watched the clouds to guide their flocks. Farmers listened to the chirping of insects as signs of rain. Sailors studied stars and winds to survive long voyages. Today, we have satellites and supercomputers, but our dependence remains the same. Technology has given us new tools, but it has also reminded us of our vulnerability. Satellites track hurricanes forming over the Atlantic. Yet, we still wait to see where they will land. Forecasts predict heat waves, yet millions endure their intensity. We can build seawalls, but tides still rise. Weather keeps us humble, reminding us that Earth is not fully under human control. Economically, weather remains central. Tourism thrives in sunny resorts. Winter sports depend on snowfall. Airlines calculate routes based on jet streams, and agriculture still bends to the rains. Even the luxury of everyday comforter, conditioning in the summer, heating in the winter, shaped by the weather outside. In this way, weather touches every economy, every industry, and every household. Culturally, too, it lingers in our imagination. Literature is filled with storms that mirror inner turmoil, clear skies that symbolize hope, and rains that signify renewal. Artists capture fleeting skies, from Turner's stormy seas to Monet's shifting clouds. Musicians compose pieces that echo thunder or mimic gentle breezes. Weather so ordinary, yet so immense, becomes a metaphor for human emotion. And then, beyond the practical and the poetic, there is a deeper wonder. To step outside at dawn and feel cool air on your skin. To watch a sunset set fire to clouds. To hear thunder roll across hills. These are small moments, yet they connect us to something vast. Weather is the reminder that we live within a larger, breathing planet. As we bring this journey to its close, let us return to calm. Tonight, as you rest, perhaps you will hear the wind outside your window or the soft patter of rain. These sounds, familiar and comforting, are part of the great story of weather. They connect you not only to your home, but to every coast, desert, mountain, and forest across Earth. And so, weather is not just science, not just data. It is the dance of our atmosphere, endlessly changing, endlessly shaping. It is the stage upon which life unfolds, and the lullaby that carries us into sleep. If you enjoyed this gentle journey, I invite you to leave a note with your country, your city, and the time of night or day you joined us. Together, we form a quiet community, scattered across the globe, yet united under the same skies. And if this video has helped you rest, consider subscribing so that we may travel again across oceans, mountains, cities, and skies in future nights. Until then, may the weather above you bring comfort, may the winds be gentle, and may the rhythms of earth soothe you into peaceful dreams.